Welcome back to KTN Prime. My name is Robinson Okenya. Remember, in this part of the show, I had promised earlier that we'll be speaking to Ian Mutiso-Mbotela, who's an advocate of the High Court, as well as Hussein Khaled, who's the CEO of Vocal Africa. And we basically want to get to hear, there's the big question that has been asked today is, where is Boniface Mwangi? And we also want to hear from Hussein Khaled, what did they have to go through in Tanzania before they were brought back to Kenya? We'll be getting into that conversation in a bit. And with me in studio is Ian Mutiso-Mbotela. Good evening, Ian. Good to have you here.
Good evening. Thank you for having me.
Yes, before we even get into that conversation, I want to take a look at, want to run through some of the names of the people that were of course, deported back into the country. And we quickly ran through that, the 8 Kenyans that were deported back into the country before we take a look at, these are human rights defenders. We do have Martha Karua, that we do have Willy Mutunga, and we also have Hussein Khaled. And aside from the 3, we also have Hanifa Adan, Gloria Kimani, and Lynn Ngugi. These were brought back into the country. And now the whereabouts of Boniface Mwangi are still unknown. And joining us to get into this conversation via Zoom is Hussein, the CEO of Vocal Africa. Good evening, Hussein. How are you doing?
Good evening. I'm doing well, but not so well because of what's happening between Kenya and Tanzania. Happy to be here.
Good to have you on our show tonight. Let me begin with you, Hussein. I mean, what was the experience like in Tanzania when you flew there?
Yeah, so when we flew there, when we were on our way there, remember we were going a day after Martha Karua and her colleagues were deported back to Kenya. And we didn't understand because they were also not told why they were brought back. But I remember when we were at the airport and discussing with Willy Mutunga, and we were like, there's no harm, we're not doing anything wrong. So let's just go there because it's very clear we are there under invitation from our colleagues and lawyers also. But then more importantly, we are there to observe legal court process. And this is a practice, as I've said before, that is applied in many, many jurisdictions. As Kenyans ourselves, we know how all members of parliament go to ICC when a leader is on the dock, So observance of court processes is not a new thing. It's something that's done across the world. And we felt that, it's in our place. This is Jumuiya Afrika Mashariki. Let's go there. Let's just be present. We don't want to interfere in the court process, but just, to let the world know that we are with Tanzanians as they navigate that particular case.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much, Hussein. Now, Ian, I'm not sure if you are in a position to answer this question. Where is Boniface Mwangi?
That is something that we have been trying to find out. Mm-hmm. It's the reason why we spent close to over 7 hours at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It's the reason why our counterparts in Tanzania have filed an application for habeas corpus. Mm-hmm. It's the same reason why we have drafted an application to file in the East African Court of Justice. It's the reason why we have requested the international bodies to intervene in this situation. So that is the big question that we have here tonight.
That is the big question that you have. I want us to listen to a bite from the president of Tanzania, that is Samia Suluhu, what she said, and she want to quote unquote before we listen to that is that some people wanapeleka utundu huko. Karen, if we can listen to that before we continue with this conversation with Hussein and Ian, let's listen into this.
Tumeanza kuona mtiririko au mwenendo wa wanaharakati ndani ya region yetu hii kuanza kuvamia na kuingilia mambo yetu huku. Sasa kama kwao wameshadhibitiwa, wasije kutuharibia huku. Walishaharibu kwao, walishavuruga kwao. Nchi iliyobaki haijaharibika. Watu wako na usalama na amani na utulivu ni hapa kwetu.
That is Tanzanian President Samia Suluhu speaking 2 days ago. Now, let me bring you into this, Hussein. What do you make of those sentiments that the Tanzanian president had to say about Kenyans, going to Tanzania and probably trying to, ruffle feathers?
I think those are very unfortunate remarks coming from a leader from the Jumuiya ya Afrika Mashariki, but more specifically from Tanzania. Historically, if you look at the struggle for independence, but also for liberation in Africa, particularly Eastern and Southern Africa, Tanzania under Mwalimu Julius Nyerere has been at the forefront of providing or playing host to individuals who are trying to liberate their countries from the atrocities that we are seeing from the colonial powers. And not just that, we know even how Kenyans have had to travel to Tanzania to seek refuge during the Moi era. Tanzania was considered a safe haven where people can actually go there, get their rights guaranteed, but more importantly, to have that solidarity. So to hear the current president, I believe Mwalimu Julius Nyerere must be turning over and over in his grave that a president is cautioning activists, is cautioning human rights defenders to keep away from Tanzania. It is extremely unfortunate, and we have to be very clear that, a threat to justice anywhere, an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. That was said by Martin Luther King. So when there are injustices committed in Tanzania, when people are being killed left, right, and center, people are disappeared, we have a duty as East African community to stand up and speak up against these atrocities. And that's what we did. We went there basically, one, to just observe those particular elections and to let our counterparts know that we are here. And, we are ready to support human rights and good governance in Tanzania.
Ian, from what you've listened to, that is President Samia Suluhu speak, what are your thoughts on her statements?
It's quite saddening that as the East African Community Bloc, we were very hopeful to actually get to have the first woman be in such a post. And we thought that the mere fact that this is a woman who understands what it means to actually not only bear a child, but also to raise one, would have compassion towards its citizens. Those particular statements indeed communicate an image and an understanding that is not only backwards, but indeed has not registered the importance of actually trying to advocate for the important things such as free speech, things such as right to life, right to movement, right to liberty. So it's quite disappointing, and it's also important to note that this remark was also very saddening to see the members who were listening to that clapping, just like our MPs on their State House, just clapping. So it's quite saddening.
Now, Hussein, what does this mean on, the diplomatic ties between Kenya and Uganda?
The diplomatic ties between Kenya and Uganda, I don't think will suffer much, because our suspicion is that both the Kenyan and Tanzanian government are talking on this, and that they may be in on this together. We suspect that our foreign affairs might have something to do with what is happening in Tanzania presently. I think yesterday we saw the CS Musalia Mudavadi speaking and justifying what was happening to Boniface Mwangi. So we are very doubtful of the government of Kenya's truthfulness on this issue. We fear that, they may be working in cahoots with the Tanzanian government to violate the rights of Boniface Mwangi. So in terms of those relations, for the governments, I don't think it's a big issue. Whether the relation between Kenyans and the government of Tanzania will remain the same, definitely not. I think we've seen quite a lot of negative responses from Kenyans to the Tanzanian government. And we have been very vocal, and some people have even gone to the extent of accusing the Tanzanian government of autocracy. you know, and we have to be very clear that Tanzania, as much as people are saying we have to understand our neighbors, that they're still growing their democracy, that they're not yet there, we also want them to understand that we as Kenyans are at a place where democracy must thrive. For us, civic space must be a guarantee, and the freedom of expression should be, be allowed to be exercised without any limitations. So these are some of the issues that we have before us. And of course, Tanzanians themselves, we've seen so many comments commending Kenyans for their stance and asking Kenyans to not let go. So between the people, I believe the bond is now even stronger.
Ian,
yes.
When you saw the comments by the CS for Foreign Affairs, that is Musalia Mudavadi, saying that, we have to, speak the truth, let us face a few facts. The level of etiquette insults that we see in Kenya is sometimes going overboard. What were your thoughts?
Can I give you a true fact? The true fact is that not only do I agree with Hussein's statement, I actually do believe that we have evidence to that effect. One, we filed a complaint with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs today at 2 p.m. Before filing that particular complaint, we did not have any formal action as far as trying to engage the Tanzanian government on bringing Boni back. It was up to about 8 p.m. this evening that the Ministry of Foreign Affairs confirmed to us minutes before 8 p.m. that they have sent a demand note, a note verbale to the Tanzanian government to not only produce Boniface Mwangi, but to also grant the consulate in Tanzania access to Boniface. We have requested that the government should be able to facilitate communication between Boniface and the family and the legal advocates. Now, between last evening, when the Cabinet Secretary Musalia Mudavadi had the interview, we had over 19 hours. They never thought to actually get to make that particular request, not until we made the formal complaint. That's the first thing. Second thing is that we already have a history on what happens when Kenyan nationals are in trouble in different countries. Recently, we had the hostess from Kenya Airways being detained in Congo. It took over 2 weeks for the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to be able to facilitate that particular repatriation. We had Kenyan nationals in Egypt who also were detained for longer, I think close to 2 months. But interesting thing is, when Moses Wetangula was the Minister of Foreign Affairs back in 2010, he actually went ahead to have a Kenyan national who was actually cited for terrorism acts from Guantanamo Bay to be repatriated back to Kenya. For somebody who has actually not been charged formally, we do not know exactly why the Tanzanian government is holding him. There is no particular action that they have gone ahead, moving with pace, moving hastily to actually intervene in this particular situation. As a matter of fact, I think this plays into the government's hand, because the work Boniface Mwangi does in this country is not only putting the current government in check, but most importantly, it's a problem which has been moved away from Kenya. In history, if you look at any Kenyan national who has actually been detained illegally or otherwise in foreign countries, it takes more than 2 weeks. This is why you're seeing statements from a legal mind like Chergey saying that it's even better that Suluhu should do something about it. So such kind of statements are very reckless. That's why I believe the statements Hussein has said are not only true, but this plays in accordance with the government's hand. And it is also equally important why the Kenya Law Society, the Tanganyika Law Society are able to be taking legal measures to be able to take this particular issue at hand. Because the moment we don't do that, we are at the mercy of the Kenyan government. What else are we supposed to do? It means now the next step is to actually escalate this issue and involve the United Nations. The next step is to involve international organizations. This is somebody who has reputable profile in this country. This is somebody so many Kenyans admire. This is somebody who not only fights, but most importantly, when we were in Kibera a few weeks ago, The statement which was given by the magistrate was for Boniface to take care. How quickly has the situation turned around? How has it played so far?
Yes.
Hasn't his statement coming to true? Isn't Boniface's life in danger? What are we supposed to do? As legal counsel, we are taking every single measure. It's very disappointing that we have to spend over 7 hours at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs without any action. It's very, very disappointing. And it's about time the Kenyan government, and especially the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, should come into terms on how they should be very, very quickly and start turning this tide around. There's no point on having a Kenyan national in harm's way in a country whereby human rights is not something which is respected to that effect. This is somebody who is likely under serious health situation. We have no idea. This government has no idea what is happening to him. It's clueless. I'm very, very afraid for any other Kenyan who's in Tanzania.
Hussein, let me bring you into this. And there were reports that, you know, your mission in Tanzania was to, destabilize the country and, not what you went to do. What do you have to say about those reports?
Well, I don't know what they mean when they say we're going to destabilize the country, when all we're going to do is appear in court. That's it. You know, and most of us even had tickets to fly back to Kenya after the court. That is in the afternoon. So I've never seen a community, a people, or a government, actually, not even a people, a government that is so afraid, you know, of openness, so afraid of justice and human rights, to the extent that just seeing nationals of another country coming to stand by, you know, your justice system, that, you know, you would feel like, so threatened. So it is absolutely not true. No one, not the human rights defenders, not the lawyers, at any point in time would like to see violence in Tanzania, would like to see chaos in Tanzania. Tanzania are our brothers, they are our sisters. We love them as much as they love us. And all we were trying to do is to help that democracy, help the respect for human rights and rule of law. We went there with positive minds and, with an attitude to safeguard the rights of every Tanzanian. And it's something that, the Tanzanian government and particularly the president has to understand that, you have to be an open government. The time has moved on so much. The world is a global village and you can no longer stay behind and, hide behind sovereignty or hide behind. I mean, we are making noise about Palestine all the way in Africa. We are making noise about Myanmar while we are all the way in Africa. Why is it that we cannot comment about a neighboring country? A neighboring country whose borders were drawn up by colonialists. You know, we are all one people. We have Maasais in Kenya, we have Maasais in Tanzania. We have Luos in Uganda, we have Luos in Kenya. You know, this is something that brings us, all of us together. So when governments come in and start saying, they're coming to disrupt, it's a divide and rule tactic, which has been used very well by our politicians in East Africa. You divide the masses, you divide the people so that you can command, rule over them. And that is exactly what those comments are meant to spur in Tanzania, that these people are coming to spoil for us. Do not allow them to do that. So divide the people. And we're saying that will not work. The time has come for Africa to now take leadership. There's a new world order and Africa is supposed to be in charge. And we want to change the status quo. We are tired, of our resources being misused and finding their ways to Europe, to the Americas, and we remain poor. Poverty is so high because our leaders who are in power right now do not want, to serve the masses. And this is what we want to change, not just in East Africa, but Africa as a whole. But let me just also agree with Advocate Ian, in that, you see, when we were at the airport, at some point, we were informed that Boniface is being brought to the airport and that you guys will be in the same plane with him back to Kenya. We even, called the Kenya Airways managers and, requested them to check whether there is an extra seat because we've just been informed that Boniface is being brought to the airport. And, just out of nowhere, that changed. So I don't know. It's a phone call that was made. I don't know if it's Kenya or if it's Tanzania, but there was a sudden change of heart. And we were at the airport and we were like, why the change? Where is he? We are almost boarding. How come he hasn't been brought here? When we were given that assurance that, he is about to join us. So I think the manner in which this whole issue is being handled is a testimony of rising authoritarianism in the East Africa region, and this is something we must resist by all means.
Ian, so now what next? I mean, you filed with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. When are you waiting to get for them to get back to you? Because, as you said, time is very important when you're talking about such an issue.
I'll give you two things. The first is that we have an advocate from the Tanganyika Law Society who has already have a habeas corpus application in court. That's one avenue. Second thing is that there's already a pending application which is due to be filed with the East African Law Justice Court. That's the second. The third that we actually have undertaken is that we have already filed a formal complaint with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and supposedly they have already given a note verbale to Tanzania to produce Boniface Mwangi to the consulate, or rather the ambassador, to have access and inform us on the reasons why he is being detained there. Now, these three things can happen simultaneously. What is currently under our control at this particular point is to escalate. When we see a Kenyan national under such circumstances, he's trapped in a foreign country and there's no action, the next step is to actually get to involve the international bodies. We have the UNHCR, who are currently have the mandate to look into this thing. We have the United Nations Human Rights Council, who have the mandate to look into these things. So the avenues of getting access to the international bodies and bring attention to the international community on this particular thing, who have diplomatic access and rather have the ability to get involved in such situations, that is going to be something else. The other thing is that Parliament has also the capability to not only intervene, but also question the Committee on Diplomatic Affairs and Foreign Engagements and Security. That's a question that needs to be raised there. So there are so many options that we can also explore, but at this particular moment, whatever we have initiated is just the beginning. We're not going to relent. There's so much that we have to do in the next couple of hours, in the next couple of days, but one way or another, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs have given us an indication that we'll have feedback on this by 11 a.m. tomorrow. So we will also present ourselves there to be able to get answers, and we expect answers.
Thank you very much, Ian. Hussein, as we wrap up our conversation tonight, of course, we are glad that you are back in the country and you're not harmed. So what's the way forward as we wrap up the conversation?
Okay, so for me, as Ian has mentioned, we have written today as Vocal Africa to the United Nations Working Group on Enforced and Involuntary Disappearances. And we have submitted an urgent appeal for them to intervene and to follow up with the governments of Kenya and Tanzania about the whereabouts of Boniface Mwangi and Agatha Atuhaire. We believe that both the governments are complicit in this matter, that they're working together. The information that is coming from Kenya and coming from Tanzania communicates that, they're both working together because they're both saying the same thing. Basically, no information, We are hopeful that, this is too big an issue and that Boniface will be returned to the country safe and sound. But at the moment, we continue to pile up the pressure. I know in Uganda, tomorrow, there will be a protest to the Tanzanian High Commission. I know in Kenya, we are organizing similar things as we did today to the Tanzanian High Commission. But the pressure is, ever more needed. We are asking Kenyans from everywhere to join us so that, we can put pressure on these governments to release both Boniface Mwangi and Agatha Atuhaire.
Thank you very much, Hussein Khaled, the CEO for Vocal Africa, and Ian Mutiso Mbotela, of course, who is an advocate of the High Court, talking to us about matters to do with deteriorating human rights. And thank you for the input that you've given us. And that is where we wrap up KTN Prime tonight. My name is Robinson Okenye. On sign language, we had Meresha Witi. Have a good night.